This is Do Your Part with Brian Gallo.
Another Do Your Part. Loyal listeners, thank you so much. Welcome back to another show. As you know, the objective here is to try to create solutions and ideas as to how we can combat underlying prejudice and racism, which we all have. Today, I've got two guys in studio, David Reese and Timothy McIntosh, both good friends of each other as well as mine. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, first question for Tim. Why are you here? When I asked you to be here, why did you say yes?
Because I feel as a white person, I feel that our voices need to really kind of be on the front lines right now, and really kind of get our perspective and how we can help to kind of end this racism war that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you have the same attitude prior to the George Floyd incident?
I want to say I have been enlightened through this whole process as well. I've always considered myself a non-racist, but I didn't really realize how privileged I was until after all this kind of went through. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being honest. Mm-hmm. That's what I want from you guys. So, David, same question for you. When I asked you to be here, why did you say yeah?
Well, echoing what Tim said, I want to say I don't consider myself racist and never have been, but I think Tim just said something super important, and that is that I have become keenly aware of my white privilege, and keenly aware of my white privilege. And the truth is, I don't think this problem is going to get solved until white people get involved, because the truth is, we need to all stand together as human beings whenever any group is targeted, and I think that gay people have a unique perspective too, because we have been touched by discrimination, not racism, but discrimination. So I think we have a keen awareness of it, but racism is different. And the truth is, like Tim said, it's time for white people to bring their voices forward. Silence is complicity. Yeah.
And we can't move forward until we acknowledge the fact that we've been privileged our entire lives. So
yeah, and I want to use my white privilege in a positive way, because I was just, before the George Floyd thing, did I know there was racism? Of course. I didn't grow up under a rock, but at the same time, I was not touched by it, really. And I think, we've talked about this. I feel like I saw it and I knew about it, but it didn't really directly affect me. Therefore, it didn't really impact me. Therefore, I wasn't moved by it, right? I wasn't moved to action.
What was different about this instance that touched you?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know why, but suddenly I was really angry.
Yeah.
Really, really pissed.
The visual of it is enough to make somebody angry.
Yeah, but there have been, this is not the first time something horrible like this has been captured on video. It's hardly the first. But for some reason, this time really pissed me off.
Good.
And,
not good, but that's the emotion that, because anger, you change turn to something else. Before you jump in, I want you guys to do me a favor. David, you begin. Tell the listeners a bit about you, a bit about your background, and I'm going to have you do the same thing, Tim.
So I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Very very white.
Was there like one black family in Eugene?
Yeah, well, there in my high school graduating class of 300 and change, there were 2 black kids.
Okay, wow.
Okay, so that tells you how. So the only diversity really in that city is brought in by the University of Oregon.
Wow.
Okay, so it's not like I wasn't exposed to minorities. I just didn't. They were not. They were not around in great numbers. So then after college, I moved to Los Angeles. And that was my first sort of, oh my God moment, where I realized, wow, there's a lot of people of color, of all different kinds of color.
Yeah.
And I remember standing at a gas station just outside LAX when I dropped my best friend off after I'd moved there. And I dropped him off for him to fly home. And I was by myself in Los Angeles. And I looked around, and LAX is in the black part of town, and I looked around, I was like, wow, I am truly a minority here. And that is literally the first time in my adult life that I can remember having that realization that, oh my God, I'm a minority here.
What did that feel like? Do you remember what that feeling was?
A lot of things it felt like. A little bit it was scared because I didn't know. I was like, oh my God, nobody looks like me here. Am I going to be okay? So a little bit of fear, which I think was born out of ignorance. And also just an awareness that this is reality. Where I came from is different. Where I came from is very sheltered. And I And the more time I spent in LA, the more I realized, oh my God, all these people who come from those places, who live there, who are born there and never make it out of there, that's their whole world. Yeah. So they have a completely different worldview than I did just because I relocated, right? So anyway, I've lived in Los Angeles ever since, basically. I've lived in the desert for a few years, on and off, and I maintain a place there. And yeah, that's my story. I work in television news.
Yeah, I want to hear that too. You don't have to be specific, but tell us a bit about your professional background.
So, I work in TV news. Most recently, I was an upper manager at a television news station in Los Angeles. I did that in Palm Springs as well. And then prior to that, I spent a number of years at a network station in LA. And, so interesting.
That's your world.
It is my world. All I've ever done is television news. I did it in Oregon before I left as well.
Which is why you're a good voice for topics, period. But especially this one, because talk about news, talk about having to have your thumb on the pulse or your finger on the pulse.
It's interesting. I tell people I'm really good at cocktail parties because I know a little bit about a lot of stuff and not a lot about anything.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna circle back to you in a minute. Tim, do the same. Tell us just a bit about you and your background.
Okay. Well, I grew up in West Covina, California, and mine is similar to David, but it's almost completely different.
I would hope so.
I grew up in West Covina, which is actually a pretty diverse city. I want to say it's more predominantly Hispanic. I didn't really have a lot of white friends, quite honestly. I probably was the token white boy in town.
Amongst your Latin friends?
Amongst my Latin friends. I grew up with mostly Hispanic, Latin peers. And when I went to school, it was pretty diverse. There was black and Hispanic and white and kind of a little bit of a mix of everything. So really kind of where I felt like I didn't fit in is when I would go and visit family like in Ohio and when everybody was white. And then I realized I wasn't like everybody else. I felt like I was a little bit more culturally aware. However, on the flip side of that, I never really realized until now that how privileged I was, because even though I enjoyed the company of my black brothers and sisters or Hispanic brothers and sisters, I was able to step away from the situation and go into an all-white neighborhood and fit in.
Right.
You know what I mean? I couldn't tear the skin off, even though I fit in all these different situations.
Yeah, because people of color, speaking from my experience, I do have to kind of be a bit of a chameleon and shift depending on, who I'm around, what situation I'm in.
Right.
And you don't have to do that. I like that.
No. And if I'm in those towns and things get a little rough, I can step outside of that town and be perfectly fine somewhere else. You know what I mean? So I grew up in West Covina, and then I stepped away from my hometown for about 8 years when I joined the military. I was in the Marines, and then I left the Marines and went to the Air Force, and I did that for another 4 years. So I did 8 years there, and then eventually moved over into Palm Springs, and I've been here for about 10 years. So
tell us about you professionally.
So I am a full-time drag performer.
Whoa.
I know, even though the midst of what's going on.
A Marine who's a Marine drag queen.
Well, I go by the name Marina Mack, and that's where my name comes from. So from being in the Marines, so that's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat right now with what's going on with COVID and all that. Yeah.
And this is what I love is that as we kind of move through life, and I have black friends, and obviously I have white friends, you guys have white friends, we tend to always make the assumption that we're supposed to think alike because we kind of look similar. And I love this example because you and I have known Tim for a while, and we just like, whoa, who would have thunk?
Yeah.
Who would have thought any of that? All right, so kind of got a little bit about your backgrounds figured out. I'm glad that you did that. So now we're going to continue to kind of talk about a lot. All right. So first thing I want to ask you is, growing up, you mentioned that you had Latin friends. Did you have black friends? This is over to you, David. Growing up?
No, but I had one black friend.
Then that would be a yes.
I've told you this story. So one of my best friends from preschool, I think it was preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, was Sasha. And Sasha and I were apparently inseparable. I mean, it was a long time ago, so I don't have great memory of it. But as my parents would tell the story, we were inseparable, right? So I changed schools when from first grade into second grade, and then a few years later, Sasha moved away with his family to Washington D.C. So our mom stayed in contact, and so my parents took me to Washington D.C. For a trip once. I was probably in 6th grade. And so it had probably been 5 or 6 years since I had seen Sasha. And so my mom set up a lunch for us all to go to lunch and get together. So we went to lunch. And it was fine. It was nice. We caught up. A lot of time had elapsed there, and it was just obvious we had grown very much apart. For just kids. We were little kids when we were friends. But I remember leaving that lunch, and I turned to my mother in the car, and I said, "You didn't tell me Sasha was black." And she's like, "Does it matter?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'm surprised that I didn't remember that." And
Did you feel deceived or caught off guard or what? Confused?
I was just surprised.
Yeah.
I was just surprised more than anything. And my mom was like, "Does it matter?" And I'm like, "Well, no, it doesn't matter. I'm just surprised that wouldn't be something that I remember." And she's like, "Well, maybe that just tells you it doesn't matter." And I'm like, "Yeah, it was kind of weird." So, it was just, so yes, I did have a very close black friend. And when I identify and when I think back to my friend Sasha, the first thing that comes to mind is not that he's black. It's just my friend Sasha. I just remember we hung out together at preschool at the YMCA, and then we went into kindergarten together, and then we went into 1st grade together. And
You still talk to him?
No, we fell apart. I mean, we just he lives in Washington D.C. now, but
We know you have black friends now.
I do have black friends now. Yeah,
You damn near got black family.
yeah.
All right. Same question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I had, as a kid in elementary and school, our black classmates and friends like that. Those were the type of friends that I had. And I grew up in an apartment complex. And if you lived, if you had apartment living growing up, it is just always a constant turnover of families moving in and out and stuff like that. And I just had such a diverse collection of friends. And I didn't really realize that there really was a difference probably until maybe junior high school is when I started to learn a little bit more about racism and the difference. But I really didn't gain a lot of close black friends until I was in the Marines, and I was stationed in North Carolina, and the platoon I was with was probably 80% black. So that's when I really kind of gained my closer black friends as I got older. So, but as a kid, it just was never even a thought. We just wanted to play and have a good time. And then I think I didn't even hear the N-word until 10 years old or something. I had no idea what that was.
You knew it was bad?
I didn't even know I didn't even know it was derogatory in any way. I had no idea. And I went home and I said it to my mother, and she slapped me across the face.
Wow.
Yeah, because I didn't know. I didn't know what it was.
You knew what you knew then.
Well, yeah, and then obviously, I just didn't think much more. I just knew it was a bad word at that point, and then obviously I learned more about it as I got older. But I always just kind of grew up and thought that I don't think that way, and I don't say that, so I'm good. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not realizing that there's a lot more to it than just saying I'm not racist. There's more educational that falls along suit with that.
And that's what people are kind of being aware of today, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think racism takes on so many different forms too, right? I mean, it's not Eugene is very progressive. It's a university town. It's very, very blue, very progressive, and so I never saw any overt racism per se. But I think it was definitely there. I think it is. It's first of all, we know racism is taught, right? But I also think that it's more subversive. It's in different ways. It's not overt, but it's still very much there. And I'm quite certain if you talk to the black kids who I went to high school with, they'd tell you. I never saw anything that gave me pause. I think if I did, I would have said something. But I'm also not dumb enough to know that I would have necessarily seen or been privy to that because, like what Tim said, I move about with great ease because I'm a white guy.
Right.
Just
and
because
it's all white guy.
Yeah, just because we didn't see it doesn't mean it
Correct.
didn't happen.
Correct.
It's because we weren't.
I wasn't aware of it.
You're not going to see it unless you're around people of color.
Right.
All right, let me back out of the Q&A a little bit, and I want us to kind of continue the dialogue we're having. Let's kind of keep this open discussion going, and I want to talk about how is racism learned, right? How is it taught? Because look, hearing your story as far as Eugene is concerned, and I have a little bit of background as far as how your parents raised you. What's different about your neighbor who grew up to be prejudiced? Like, you see what I'm asking you? And how do we open that discussion up?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know.
I think it just really comes down to a matter of power. It's the white people that don't want to give up the power that we've had for hundreds of years, and we're just going to judge somebody by the melanin in their skin and consider that, somebody that is beneath us. And so we don't, and I don't necessarily mean me, but I have to acknowledge all white people when I say we, is when, the people that don't want to say Black Lives Matter is because they don't want to give up their power. They feel that it's giving them something that, that they're going to be losing something by saying that.
And that's a very touchy topic, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
I think and I think also that what Tim just said, I think that a lot of white people are all about Black Lives Matter until they perceive that it comes at the expense of them, that they might have to give something up, and I'll tell you, I mean, having lived in a privileged
all they have to give up is a thought. There's no action.
Right, but they don't understand that, and I think it's born out of fear. I think it's born out of fear.
Almost everything is, right?
Right. I think it's born out of fear.
So hold on, let me jump in real quick because I want to try to get a definitive answer out of this. So I'm assuming you have friends on your Facebook or still that are in Eugene who are prejudiced. You have to.
Yeah.
Right. So can you maybe think of what was different between, because you guys went to the same schools, studied the same curriculum, what might have been different in their house opposed to yours that had them go a different direction? Because I could think it could be something as small as parents actually using the N-word or being driving and saying, that fucking nigger cut me off. Or it could be something as small as, I like black people, but I don't want you to bring one home or date one. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's so many extremes and so many examples of how it can begin to be instilled in youth. What might have been different from you opposed to your best friend or neighbor?
Well, I think my parents were very, very forward thinking. And it was interesting. I would not have told you that when my parents were still alive or when I was younger. The older I get and the more I reflect on them and what they taught me and the way our household was run and the things that were taught, like I was taught to challenge thinking, and why is something the way it is? And is that the way it should be? And is that right for you?
Not just understand it as a fact.
No, nothing. No, in fact, hardly anything.
Why you were in journalism.
Yeah, I mean, hardly anything was presented as fact. I mean, everything was, how do you feel about this? I mean, we had family meetings. There was just the three of us. I was an only child. But we had family meetings every week in which we discussed things, and discussed rules of the house and why we do things that way. And is that the way we want to do them? And I was given a voice at a very young age. So I think that also enabled me to develop a lot of critical thinking skills and also to understand that I have a voice and not being afraid to use that. And so my parents really taught me very early on to question things. If I don't like something or I don't understand something, ask why. And so, I think it's really subtle things like that. I think you've struck on some of it. My parents would never use, the N-word, but also it extends well beyond that. Like they taught me to accept everybody, even if they weren't the same as me, and even if what they were doing wasn't necessarily cool with us, they wasn't necessarily bad or wrong. It was just different, and that was
such
allowed.
as like religion, for instance.
Yeah, and my parents were religious,
like Muslim.
Yeah, my parents were very religious. I was raised in the Lutheran Church, which is actually quite conservative. I mean, we call it Catholic light, So I mean, I was raised in that too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was also raised to question things, and something wasn't wrong if it was different.
So you were never at a friend's house and heard one of their parents say something that raised a flag for you?
Not that I remember.
Gotcha. Can you think of anything like that, Tim?
No, nothing like that. And again, it's hard for me to say what another household, how they were educated or how they learned, because I really did grow up in such a diverse neighborhood. Excuse me. And even in my household, my mother, we were just very liberal and very just kind of open. Like, my mother's a hippie. Like, it's like peace and love everybody. And if I ever said something that would come off as derogatory or mean, or if I said somebody was fat or something, that was mean, my mother like just freaked out and like
poppy.
yeah, she scolded me, you know what I mean? So I was just always like, that's wrong, you know, live your life. She always let me do what I wanted to do and live your life.
Treat people right.
Treat people right, you know, just be a good person.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a great foundation to grow up with, but it takes more than just being a good person these days. You really have to be educated, you know, so.
Boy, I think that's an important point. Yeah.
Racism in the military. This is something I took a note here. I asked you a little bit about racism in Eugene, and your upbringing, obviously, as you said, you kind of grew up in a serious melting pot. Talk about, you had to have witnessed racism in the military, and I almost hope I'm wrong.
I'm going to say you're wrong because I never witnessed it. Again, when I was in North Carolina, my entire platoon was black, you know, so I just, you know, I mean, as far as my
were they ever racist towards you?
Probably I just never took it bad. They would pick on me like, hey, white boy, or you can't dance, like things like that. But it was all I just never took it serious. But I guess if I was to flip it the other way around, it would be taken pretty bad, I guess. So it just never was a thought, I guess. I mean, I say that because my first assumption would have been that you would have definitely would have seen racism in the military. I'm sure there is. You just didn't witness it or experience it. I mean, the only thing that I can say close to it is you know, I can't give a specific example, but maybe it's the location of the station. Like maybe when I was stationed in Mississippi, which I feel personally, and I'm not trying to talk bad about Mississippi, but I think they're 50 years behind. I think a lot of people think that.
Alabama, Mississippi,
you know. So when
South.
I was there, just to kind of how people are, I never personally witnessed somebody say the N-word or something bad, but that vibe and that feeling and just kind of, you know, how people live. What do you guys, so since you guys have never witnessed that, and now we live in a tech age, right? What do you have to say to all of these people that are now caught on video? That are so brazen and so racist to just call people the N-word or call out Latin folks. I mean, what do you have to say to that? Well, they're ignorant. I mean, does that make your jaw drop?
It is jaw dropping to me because I like to think we were past that, and clearly we're not. You know, and I guess what's frustrating to me is that like I said, I'd like to think we were past that, and I think right now we have a president who's made it okay to be racist. Oh yeah, and so it's more than okay. He's encouraging, right? Yeah. So right, so it's all come flooding back, and I'm just horrified. Just horrified that this is my country, you know, and that these are my people, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, how is this where we are? And like I said, I really thought we were past this, and we're not. And that's another thing that just pisses me off is that, you know, when we come to one of these defining George Floyd moments, right, it just is a thunderbolt into this is where we are. Like it or not, you can discuss it all day, but this is truly a reflection of where we are right now, and what are you going to do about it? Stop you in your tracks, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm horrified. And now all these videos of these Karens, as they are called on social media, I just want to slap them. I'm like, where are you from? Like, what is your deal? I just can't get over it. It goes back to the whole power thing. It's a power struggle with them. And you know what? And I see these, and obviously, you know, in this day of technology, the phones, and we're catching more bad cops, and we're catching more Karens, and we're catching more of these racist activities. You know, I want to say it needs to be a teachable moment where they need to be educated, but a lot of these people have it ingrained in their head. This is the way of life. This is how it is. I'm an American, and it's going to have to go beyond a teachable moment. They have to be in a very uncomfortable situation, just like, you know, black people have for their entire life. You know what I mean? So I don't think, and it goes back to what you said, they're not going to learn until they're directly affected. That's right. And that's the problem, is that I think a lot of these people don't want to be affected. They have chosen, they believe that their belief system is right, that they are right, and that this is someone else's problem. And that's where I guess I was ashamed of myself. And I think I told you this, you know, I was mad at myself when we came to this, because I realized that unless white people join in the chorus of voices saying this isn't okay, it will never change. Because the truth is, whites are still the power brokers in this country culturally, right? And so, you know, the most powerful things I ever heard was some of these Black Lives Matters rallies in which I saw signs, you know, saying white silence is complicity. And I'm like, wow, that's right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I need to speak up because
I smile because it's working.
I know it's not okay, but that's not enough.
But seeing just those few words lined up correctly, it's working. It resonated. It stuck with you.
It really did. It really, like we said, the Thunderbolt. I was like, oh my God. And you have to take action now.
Well, yeah, and it's going back to the first question you asked earlier on. It says, when did you, find, that it really kind of, the movement has changed or whatever since George Floyd. It's the Black Lives Movement. And again, I remember when they started years ago, and I didn't really quite understand it because I think I jumped on that train. Well, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but so does all lives matter.
Right.
But I wasn't really educated on the whole thing. But when I took the time back, and I think this is where I was enlightened, when I took the time to actually go to the Black Lives Matter website or talk to your Black friends and really educate yourself to see what this movement is all about, because that's exactly what it is. I get it, and I understand that I will never understand, but I stand, and that's one of the quotes that I love living by now because I see it.
Say it again.
I understand that I will never understand, meaning I will never be a Black person.
Yeah.
But I stand,
Yeah.
and I will stand with them, and
Yeah.
especially
That's powerful.
It is.
Me, and I do have a platform as a drag performer, and I have my online show and stuff. I need to use those moments to educate people, and if I can change one person's mind, that's success. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And because it's like
Well,
it's trickle domino effect.
And it's changing hearts and minds. And going back to the fact that some of these people don't want their hearts and minds changed, we have to work on them.
Right.
It's kind of like I remember back in the whole struggle for same-sex marriage, and that was one of the things that I kept hearing. One of the messages was, this is on us to make our straight allies understand it's not enough to be supportive. You need to speak out. We need your voice. And that's what really, I think, moved that over the finish line, was that whole thing. And I'm like, it's the same thing here. We need to speak up and be part of the chorus, because the absence of our voice is deafening.
So a minute or two ago, you said we need to take action. Take action how? And I'm going to ask you that again at the end of the show, because we always ask guests, give us some solutions. Give us some easy steps that people can take home or practice that are going to be able to help them combat this. So take action. You don't have to answer that now, but do you have an answer? What is that? What does that look like? What does take action mean?
I don't. Right. I mean, I don't for myself.
Because you're taking action now by you being here, right?
Yeah.
That's one example.
Yes. And I think that I'm so much more aware and awoke to this now, that I feel like my mission now moving forward is to not be complicit and to speak up if I see something, say something.
That was one of my questions. If you see one of these quote unquote Karen moments, would you speak or would you pull out your phone and record?
Both.
Smart.
Both. I mean, I'm a journalist, so of course I'm going to record it. But also, I would absolutely say something, because you can't let that kind of stuff go unchecked anymore. That's why it is the way it is, because it's been left unchecked for all these years, and we got to check these bitches. Sorry, it's not okay, and they've been allowed to persist, and it needs to stop. And so, I think that's my personal, if somebody had an easy solution to this problem, we probably wouldn't find ourselves here. Right. And if we did, we would find ourselves moving forward from here as a unified group right now. I think that's part of the challenge here, is that there is no easy one solution. And I don't know what the solution is. I think it starts with each of us, though. I think it starts with individuals taking a stand and saying, I'm angry by this. I'm angry about what's happening. It's not okay. The status quo isn't okay with me.
I'm going to keep checking back with you from time to time and see how you're doing with this journey.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a journey.
And I want you guys to do me a favor, and as you continue to create this journey, because it has to be tailor-made, note things if you can for me. I know it's kind of a weird request I'm asking of you, but if there's things that you find that are helping you become more aware, let me know. And we share those along with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to kind of answer the question a little bit on my end, as far as taking action, it really just comes down to, educating yourself. Really educate yourself on Black history and really why we are, why we're here. A lot of people didn't know what Juneteenth was.
Did you?
I did. And I made sure that I talked about it when I was live on show. I have the platform. It has to be used. It takes more than just, there was a situation, I don't know if I can bring it up, that you had.
You can talk about it, yeah.
You had a situation where somebody drove by and called you the N-word, and you had posted that on social media, and I could have just liked the post and commented and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Brian," but I wanted to take it a step further because I also have that platform. I had to reshare that, and I need people to be uncomfortable. I need people to really empathize and put themselves in your situation. What if this was you? Because you're targeted just walking out your door. You know what I mean? As a gay man, I can pass as straight and I can fit into society. As a white man, I can kind of fit in anywhere I go, but as a black man, you already have a strike against you just stepping outside your door. You don't see white people getting shot for running down a street, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or buying iced tea or, wearing a hoodie. You don't see that happening. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's far less than, our black counterparts. So,
But what you just said, I think, is really important. That is that people need to be uncomfortable. And I think that whole All Lives Matter thing is a white attempt to put gauze over it to make it feel more comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I support Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. No, we're not talking about all lives, because right now you're part of the problem, and you don't have a problem. You're a white person. This problem doesn't actually apply to you. It applies to black and brown people. So stop putting up this all lives matter nonsense and let's address the issue. Because that's just perpetuating this whole all lives matter thing. It's just a whitewash and a way to make it comfortable and make us feel like we're doing something. Oh, well, all lives matter. Oh, off.
Right.
That's BS. That is a total cop-out, and that is an unwillingness on your part to address this and to do something about it. So instead, you're just going to cop out and say, well, all lives matter. No, that's not the message right now, folks. Hi. White people lives aren't being taken from them. Okay? Newsflash, this hasn't happened to white people. So right now, white people need to sit down, shut up, and listen to their black brothers and sisters and make that the priority. That's how we have to do this. And this all lives matter thing is just racism. It's just racism.
Well, it is.
It's just another attempt to whitewash this again and to make it comfortable. And what Tim said is right. People need to be uncomfortable. And if hearing Black Lives Matter makes you uncomfortable, then bitch, I'm going to run around selling Black Lives Matter in the grocery store.
And these people that just refuse to say Black Lives Matter, they're going to be the same ones that go on Facebook and say Blue Lives Matter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, they want to make it, they want to divide. Again, this is about division, right? It's about division. It's about, well, how come you don't care about blue lives? I never said anything about blue lives.
And blue lives is something you put on and take off.
Right. Again, that's a different thing. That's a badge. You can take that off and walk. Right. You can't take the black off.
Right.
But again, I don't.
And even if I could, I wouldn't. Go on.
But here's the thing. From where I sit, that is a choice that you make, a career choice that you make. And God bless you. I do respect police, and I don't have a problem with law enforcement as a whole. The problem here is that we have some bad policing going on in America, because we do have a policing problem. We have a race problem. Yeah, those are two separate problems that are interconnected. But to Tim's point, you can walk out of the house and pass, right? Don't make this a police thing. I mean, it is a police thing, but don't make this, mutually exclusive. I can still support police and still support the fact that the police are mistreating black people. Those two things can coexist. Right?
I could not agree more. In fact,
Right.
that we have brains for that reason. We are born to make choices, and for that reason, we can juggle different ideas simultaneously. Why is that so easy for you to comprehend? But why can't other people adopt that same idea?
Comfort. It's exactly what Tim said. It's about comfort, and it's about not wanting. I want to support this all day until it affects me.
How does that make you feel when you read that? I saw this meme on Facebook, and I never respond to things on Facebook. Most of my background the past several years has been in news. I have to be very careful with my input. I had to respond to this woman's Facebook page, and it got a bit ugly. What do you have to say to that? Because that's what we're talking about.
Well, I'm gonna read it so that way people understand. And it's a meme of an older white man with a cane and a black man helping him,
helping him walk.
Helping him walk. And the top of it says, "Lives matter." And then it says, if you need a color in front of those words, you're racist. This goes back to what David was saying. It's gauzing it. It's making us feel like we're doing something wrong. That post itself is racist.
Yep. And again, that is an attempt to, I support, but don't take anything from me. Mm-hmm. Don't take anything from me. All lives matter. My life matters too. The problem here is that white people cannot embrace the idea that their white privilege is part of the problem, and that black people do not move the same way in society that white people do. And they just don't want to see that.
Even the most privileged black people don't have that opportunity.
No, it's a whole different thing. And they just don't want to see that. And so anything that makes them uncomfortable, therefore, is bad. And we must whitewash it, and we must gauze it. We must make it palatable to people. And I'm sorry, that's what's gotten us where we are today. We have to face this head on. This problem is not affecting white people. So stop trying to lump white people into this.
Stop trying to make it about you.
Stop making it about you. It's about black and brown and people who are of color and any spectrum of that color.
And they just feel like if they just say the words Black Lives Matter, that they are taking power away from themselves, and they're giving black people more. It's not taking anything away from us by just saying those words. It's not doing anything.
And you see that GIF, or pardon me, that meme, which is basically a pie chart, or it's explaining it's not pie, people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But
there's no surplus of, you know what I mean?
But I heard something when we talked earlier about this. Part of the problem is that white people don't see the problem. A lot of white people. I think a lot of enlightened white people do. There are white people out there who are smart and who can see this and are trying to fight it. But there are a tremendous number of white people who don't see the problem because the system works for them.
Yeah.
And when the system is working for you...
It's to set up that way. It's
right.
devised that way.
It's devised that way. So you're not directly impacted by anything. And so when I stop and look at that, I look at all of the things that I have done in life and the experiences that I've had in life and the situations that I've been in that my white privilege got me out of, that if my skin were darker, I would have been incarcerated. I mean, I've been pulled over for driving on a suspended license and let go with my car. Crazy, stupid stuff that substance abuse. We treat that as a medical problem for white people. We treat it as a criminal problem for black people.
So you just gave me very easy examples of white privilege. Why people are thick, and I've got a lot of white friends. I was talking to my cousin. If you're listening, sorry, I'm not going to use your name, but she's like, I don't get it, and those words are inflammatory to her. They don't understand the concept, the idea of what white privilege means. You are giving me very easy examples. Where's that disconnect with people?
Well, they haven't been touched by it.
Right. It's.
But to me, white privilege. You guys can think of so many examples, back to back.
But that's the norm to them. That's the norm to them. That's the baseline. This is the way that they can't see that it's not that way for people of color, and therein lies the disconnect. They just can't see that other people are treated differently. And it's like, folks, open your eyes. It's everywhere. It's all around you. George Floyd just happened to be caught on video. But this stuff happens all the time, And one of the things you said to me when we first started talking about the Floyd incident was, he's like, "This is hardly the first time." I mean, no, he's like, you said to me, "No offense, but this is hardly the first time." And I'm like, "You're right.
Right.
You're right. This is not the first time, but it's the first time that I have been moved to be angry about it."
Good. And I have those conversations with my black friends. I always check in with them, and I remember vividly, listeners, obviously we're still new, but we've got some of you've heard me say, I've had that sit down with my mom. It wasn't about the birds and the bees. It was about how you have to deal with police, period. And actually older white people. So you talk about the situations, but we're kind of programmed to almost robotically to know how to respond.
I want to tell the story of being stranded on the 10.
Go ahead.
So I'm my truck broke down on the 10 freeway. This is like a month ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago, before all the Black Lives Matter stuff, I think.
But COVID was still happening.
But COVID was happening, and I was driving from Los Angeles to Palm Springs, and my truck broke down. And so I called AAA, and I'm waiting on the side of the 10 for the AAA to come. And because of COVID, you can't ride with the AAA driver anymore. So I'm like, oh, damn, how am I going to get back? How am I going to get my car? My car's going to get towed to Palm Springs. How am I going to get to Palm Springs? So I called Brian, because Brian's one of my closest friends, and I said, hey, will you come rescue me? And he said, yes. So Brian drives in and pulls up behind me on the side of the 10. And so now my truck's sitting there with the hazard lights on. Now he's behind me with his hazard lights on. We were well out of traffic. We were safe. But we're sitting there and a CHP officer pulls up behind us. And my reaction to that was, oh, cool. You know, a CHP officer is coming by to check on us to make sure we're okay because we're sitting on the side of the freeway with our flashers on, right? That moment of the CHP officer getting out of his car, the visceral reaction that you had to him, and you're like, put out your cigarette, stand over here, where's your wallet? And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm like, he's just going to walk up and ask us if we're okay, which is exactly what he did. But Brian's reaction to him, and it was just profound to me that I had this reaction to the police officer of thank you for stopping and checking on me, and I did thank him, and so did you. Mm-hmm. But your reaction to his presence walking up, you were visibly nervous about his presence arriving on the scene there. Mm-hmm. And I was not at all. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to the fact that you and I have had very different experiences with law enforcement and been taught differently about law enforcement. I appreciated the fact that he was coming to check on me, and that's all he did. He left after he found out that we had, AAA was on the way and everything was fine. We were okay. And he said, I just saw you on the side of the freeway, and I went down and turned around and came back just to make sure you're okay. And I'm like, thank you. Mm-hmm. But that I think illustrates the fact that you have to move through the same daily life that I do, you have to behave or be trained to behave differently than I do as a black man. Mm-hmm. And as a white man, my response to law enforcement is, oh, they're coming to help me.
To protect them.
To protect me. And that's something that I heard subsequent to this. I heard somebody saying, it's white people don't understand that when they see the police are there to help them. When the black people see the police are a threat.
To hurt us.
To hurt you.
To figure out what we're doing wrong.
Right.
And period.
Period.
Their job for black men is to roll up and say, okay, you're sus. You're guilty of something, so let me shake you down and figure out what it is. Either you have a felony, you have a warrant, you have drugs on you, you're not licensed, whatever it might be.
Right. And so that I would say to white people.
Hold on. Let me just say one more thing. I have had interactions with police that have been positive. Period. And obviously, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's great.
We're not talking about that though.
Yeah, no,
because that's to be expected.
No. Yeah, that's
the way it should be.
People should be treated with respect, regardless of what you're doing.
But statistically, all you could just Google and you can see that black people are treated completely different than a white person.
Look, I remember I was in Pasadena with my buddy Andre, pulling up to his house. Baller, right? We're rolling in nice cars. I was in my BMW, and I got pulled over, and the Asian cop gets off of his bike, and he has his hand on his gun as he's walking up to talk to me. Hand on his gun, and I'm like, really? Like, okay, so way to set a tone.
Yeah.
Way to set a tone.
Right. And another really quick story, my partner James, who's Italian, when he tans, he gets really dark.
I thought he was Latin or Middle Eastern.
No.
Anyway, go on.
He's Spanish-Italian. So when he tans, he gets really dark. Well, when he was younger, he did get pulled over, and it was a group of friends. It was him, a white guy, an Asian guy, whatever. They got pulled over, and the cop pulled him over, and the first thing the cop said, he got on his headset, and he goes, 2 Caucasians and a black male. Without even really identified, and treated Jim differently because he assumed he was a black man. And now this was something that happened in the 90s or early 2000s or whatever.
Which is kind of even worse.
Exactly. So automatically, even though he's not a black man, he was treated as one. And so he had that kind of firsthand experience of how cops blatantly treat.
Out the gate.
Walking up to the door, so.
I was pulled over maybe about 6 months ago. And after the cop was getting ready to write me the ticket, sign here, sir. He says, last question, what are you? I said, what's your race? I said, really? Yeah, so I told him mixed. But it's a similar situation. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know what I mean? It's nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Well, see, so as we're talking about law enforcement, we have a law enforcement problem in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that we're training our law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying that all cops are bad, because they're not.
Right. I had a cop on yesterday. He's a great dude.
Yeah, I mean, and God bless law enforcement. They're the ones who put themselves between us and bullets sometimes. Yep. But the problem is the way they are trained and the way that they are deployed by their supervisors many times, inflame situations with black people. It's no wonder we wind up with riots all the time. And by the way, the white folks and the racists will say, oh, well, those black people are rioting again. Well, they're rioting because they're being tear gassed by peacefully demonstrating. If those were all white people out there, you think the cops would be showing up with rubber bullets and tear gas and flak jackets? No. They wouldn't even show up that way.
Well, maybe if they understood why the riots are happening. They're just saying they're rioting and they're looting their stores or whatever the case is. The riots are not used as a tool. They're a repercussion of how they've been treated.
Right.
For hundreds of years. And that's what people aren't understanding.
Yeah.
This has been going on since before our grandparents. It's been going on for such a long time. It's not just something that's been happening for the past few years.
Are you hopeful that that there'll be change? Like, are you hopeful that this is the tragedy that will make a change?
Absolutely.
You're hopeful of that?
Absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of being on board with the Black Lives Movement and using my platform and as a white person to be on the front lines with them. Let us take the bullets for a while. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that literally, but I mean, we need to really be up front and take the blunt of this for a while. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
We certainly need to be at the table. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are you hopeful, David?
I am. I also feel like, I think I've said this to you, I feel like the enormity of the problem is almost so overwhelming that I don't know how to start. And so, when you ask me what is my solution, I don't know. This is such an enormous problem, and it has such...
Listen, you've got you've got 14 more minutes left to come up with a solution.
Okay, so I'll get right on
during
that.
these pauses when Tim's talking, I need you guys both. You got to give us one or two.
Well, the solution, the solution.
Don't give it to us yet.
Oh, I thought you wanted it right now.
No, it comes at the end of the show.
Oh, okay.
Take notes. It's why you got pens and papers in front of you.
I already have it in my head. I'm good.
I bet you do.
I haven't done my homework.
You guys want to play a game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Ready? What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's your favorite food?
Oh my God.
Come on. These
Pizza?
are easy. Pizza.
Tacos.
What's your favorite animal?
Lion.
Like cats.
You're taking a long time with these answers.
I know. I'm just trying to think. I don't know. What is my favorite animal? I like big cats, puma and tigers and.
I know this game.
Really?
Yeah.
What's my next question?
This is a personality test.
No.
Okay.
Have you ever used the word nigger?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. You want to unpack that? Why don't you talk about that?
Usually
in a song that I hear.
What about you, David?
No, I've used it. I have used it. I've used it derogatorily towards a black person.
Towards me?
No, not you.
Okay, talk about that. Talk about why you did it, how it made you feel, how you felt after. Would you do it again? Talk about all that.
I don't remember the specifics of who it was or why it was, but I think it was something in traffic, and I think someone cut me off, and I was with a friend who was fairly overtly racist, and I said, "Oh, that nigger just cut me off," or something along those lines. And I didn't give it a lot of thought at the moment that it came out of my mouth, but afterwards, when I dropped him off, I'm like, why did I say that? I'm like, why did I do that? And I remember being relieved that I didn't say it to that person's face, that nobody heard it except my friend in the car. And I'm ashamed of having done that. It's such a hurtful, horrible thing to say.
Did you feel shame in that day or after you
that
said
day? Yeah, later that day. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong the moment I said it, but I still said it. And like I said, I was relieved that it was in private and that only one person heard it. But I felt pretty shitty about having said it, and I vowed I wouldn't say it again, and I haven't.
And you haven't.
I haven't.
I can honestly say I've never used it towards somebody in a derogatory way. It's usually either...
What about like a chink or gook or spick or something?
I've never used those words to somebody in a derogatory way, ever. And I can honestly say that 100%. If I've used it, it's usually a part of a story or a quote from a movie or a song, or one of those, or repeating something
Never with
somebody's...
malicious intent.
Never.
Interesting. I appreciate you being honest, David. You can look at me. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're still cool.
Okay. All right. Good.
We are still fam.
No,
yo. And that's why I asked you. That's why I tried to throw you off with the blue and the shit. But y'all took so damn long with your answers. But because again, this is what people need to hear, and they can say, okay, well, I've used that word. It's all about introspective moments. It's about thinking, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've used that word, if you're listening to this and you say, yeah, David, I've used that word too, my challenge to you is stop. Just stop. Mm-hmm. Because what seems like such a minor slight to you is deeply, deeply offensive to someone else. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's about acknowledging that offense and acknowledging that you may not understand why it's offensive to them, but the knowledge that it is deeply offensive and it is deeply, deeply hurtful, don't use that word.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to follow suit with that. I mean, again, my experience has not necessarily been like that for like yours. However, even though I've said it or I've sang along a song with it or whatever, we need to be really conscious about, you know, our surroundings and the music we hear, regardless if they say it in a song. Just don't mouth those words or whatever, because I've been guilty of that as well, even in my shows.
And we look for it too, because we know those songs front to back, and when that word comes up, we're looking.
You're looking at your lips, right?
What's it going to be?
Right, exactly. And you know what? Guilty, and then I've been guilty for that as well too.
But let's talk about this for a second,
Go
because
ahead.
you and I have talked about this, Brian. So I think that I speak for a certain segment of white people, myself included.
And thank you for not prefacing that just incredibly generally. That it's really specifying.
No, there's a specific group of white people that I think are somewhat enlightened, certainly don't have all the answers, certainly been guilty of perpetuating this problem on blah, 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 blah. But now are at this juncture in culture right now where they realize that the status quo isn't working. Okay, so we've got that baseline, right? So I think I do speak, though, for a bunch of white people, and Tim, I'd like to hear your perspective on this, that I am scared of some black people. I'm not scared of you because I know you, and I feel like you know my intent, and you know me and my heart, and you know where I'm coming from. But I am scared of being around some black people because I don't feel like they know my heart, they know my intent. They're going to judge it basically only on my words, and I am so scared of offending somebody unintentionally.
It's fear. So everything's fear-based.
Yes, it's totally fear-based. But as a result of that, I shy away from circumstances. Would I walk up to a group of black people on the street? No, I wouldn't. Not because I don't have anything to say, or not because, or let's change that. If there's two groups of people at a party that I'm at, and there's a group of white folks standing over here having a conversation, and there's a group of black people standing over here and having a conversation, which conversation am I going to go join? I'm going to go join the white people. And I think that's part of the problem is that
it's interesting because you and I have traveled a lot, and when we say we're in Turkey, for instance, you're not trying to find like-minded people. You're immersing yourself in the Turkish culture.
I want to.
Right? So I just bring that up because it has to be a conscious choice.
It does.
You have to get on an airplane and go to Turkey to be able to experience some culture.
And Brian and I have traveled together, and I think I love to take myself out of
I learned so much.
I don't.
And everybody should travel.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God.
Hold on, but I don't want to get off track because I remember when I had my family reunion and I took you. We all went to dinner, and I was like, I'm bringing David.
Yes.
And you were around all of my black family, and I could feel your uncomfort.
Yeah.
But here's the deal, dude. That's normal. What you're talking about right now with this fear and this, I'm going to call it more discomfort or uncomfort. That's normal for a lot of people, and that's just not being in your own element, right?
Do you think that's what it is?
It's 100% that. I know for me, for instance, if I'm in a room full of, say, Asians or, say, Latins, I'm not going to feel fear necessarily, but there is going to be a little bit of discomfort, right? But what I'm going to do is the same thing that you force yourself to do, which we have to do, is you got to break through. You got to create dialogue, find something to talk about, find ways to create common bonds. It's what we do.
Right. And I guess your fear of offending them and that uncomfortableness is how black people feel 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? So how you're feeling is how they feel all the time, I think.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that. And it depends on the situation. It also has to do with birds of a feather flock together. That's why black folks roll with black folks, et cetera, et cetera.
But
right?
But
hold on. But that is part of the problem. And folks, if you are listening, I get that you get into these comfortable cliques, and that's also human behavior. But that's where we go wrong, right?
And let me, I'm gonna piggyback on that really quick. As far as, am I, you said that you are, would you not walk up to a group of black people on the street or whatever? And for me, it's, was I that way as well too? Yes, I probably was that way, but it's really kind of assessing your situation and your environment. Now, if they're,
it's also, as corny as it sounds, leaning into the fear. If everybody
You
just
have to-
understood the
Yeah.
real definition of fear,
Yeah, so
and if people
yeah.
understood what the solution for fear is, people would be more prone to want to face their fucking fears.
Exactly. And you know what? And if I was to go to a party and there was a group of black people and a group of white people, I'm actually the type of person that would actually go up to both of those.
Right. I know you.
Yeah.
Go to both of those groups,
I
because
agree.
honestly, I feel that there's so much value from everybody, and I
But
really
that's where you and I are different, and I totally.
And that's
I
because
know
that's how I grew up.
and I know that about you. I mean, Tim is the one who will walk up to the craziest looking people in the room. Tim goes right up to them.
Yeah,
and
but
I respect that.
Let's say, but hold on, I'm about to throw you under the bus right now. Let's say we're in a club atmosphere. 9 out of 10, chances are you're going to be taking a brother home before a white dude. It's another conversation. Or am I wrong?
No, I mean, yeah. In terms of like,
I could be wrong. I don't know what your preference is, but I know from traveling with you and knowing you,
Yeah, I mean, I am very diverse in terms of my personal male preferences. Was that a nice way to say that? Okay, all right. No,
I could be wrong. Maybe I got ahead of myself.
This is not. Yes, I mean, and I think that speaks to the fact that you know my heart.
That's
I mean,
one example.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see color. If you're hot, hot's hot. Okay, but. I'm talking about social settings where I am just afraid of inadvertently offending somebody. And while you were talking, for some reason, Tim, this made me think of this. Like the very term black, are we calling them black or are we calling them African Americans? I'm saying emphasis on them because I want to call myself out for that term.
But say what you say, and if you get corrected, then that's your teaching moment. It's almost like you like with transgender.
Right.
If you're using the wrong pronouns, they will correct you and they will tell you this is how I want to be identified as.
Yeah,
and that's your moment.
Listen,
and then don't do it again.
Yeah.
But if you're in a group setting, I've heard like. Don't call us black, call us African American, and vice versa. So
I always say vice versa.
So I just, whenever the situation is, just say or say, hey, how would you want me to do it? And it's just to make it.
I just think there's a lot of people out there that their hearts are in the right places. This is very superficial, but that their hearts are in the right places. They just are. This fear perpetuates because they're afraid of offending or stepping in it.
Yeah.
And I
you
feel
were
like
just talking. That's what you just were talking about.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like we need to have that discussion. That's a starting point.
Consciously push past our
Yeah,
fear.
we got to
And
push
stop
past
being
that.
so damn scared.
Yeah.
Not you, just everybody listening.
Right.
Because we all, everything, because here's the cool part about these conversations is as vulnerable as you were in that moment, and thank you for being vulnerable, check out the TED Talk, Brene Brown, Vulnerability. That is where there's growth, right? So in that moment when you were a little uncomfortable, that's huge because other people need to hear that story because they can relate to it. I can relate to what you're talking about, as Tim and everybody listening. So I appreciate you sharing that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And again, as corny as this sounds, we've heard it from Tim Robbins to everybody. But if people don't lean into their fear and start getting uncomfortable, as you also said, there's no growth.
And consciously including black people in social settings. For example, and I'm guilty of this because I didn't really think about it. Like in my shows, I have my own show, whatever, and I cast based on talent and kind of like the lineup or whatever. And I've noticed that it's not really a lot of black entertainers in it. And I can use the excuse that there's not a lot black drag queens in town.
The demographic, right?
But you really kind of have to, and the person that really brought this to light for me, and I think you both know Cece Russell, who I just absolutely just think the world of, and she really kind of brought it that we have to consciously include black entertainers into our settings, because how else are we supposed to be inclusive if we're just continuously?
I like that you said settings, because that could be anything.
Settings, social
settings.
Work settings. I think I recently saw. I don't remember if it was a makeup artist or an actress that says, "I will refuse to work there until you make your
diversify your
until
team.
it's a little bit more diverse. I want to see color."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the
So-
very fact that we need to do that, I think, speaks back to that whole Karen thing and the whole all lives matter. Is that, you know, they all that is a way to, again, gauge yourself and to rope yourself off, but also it's a way to make an excuse not to go the extra mile and to go and be inclusive. And if you don't think we have to do that, this is why we find ourselves where we are today, is because we haven't. And so the argument that, you know, oh, that's reverse racism, because I've heard that a million times. People
Which is
saying,
absurd.
yeah,
stupid.
it's reverse racism. I mean, you know, why should they get in just because they're black? Well, they need a leg up.
Well, that idea is not absurd, but the whole idea of reverse racism. Racism is racism. You
Yeah.
can't
Right.
fucking reverse it.
What's
Right.
reverse racism?
Oh,
There's
but-
also some white privilege in that comment.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
100%. But I just think that's the kind of mentality and thinking that a lot of white folk have. That just, and you know, the fact is, you got to call them on it. You just got to call them on it. And that's my personal pledge now, is that when I hear that kind of stuff, to call them out and say, excuse me, would you define for me what reverse racism is?
Yeah, right. And
You
then
know?
and then please educate them when
Yes,
they're done.
yes.
Taking a small step back, and I know you're trying to train me not to say that. I have a friend of mine who was traveling internationally. He was going into one of the airline private lounges, right? If you remember, and he was standing next to a black family who was being refused, who were all members, but were being refused. He went in, the place was half empty, and I told him, Mike, like, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm like, pick up that phone, email, call British Airways or American Airlines or whatever, United. I don't think I don't know which one it was, but do something about it.
Yeah,
you
take
should have,
action.
You should have you should have taken action in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of, you know, again, talking about, you know, so actually this is a perfect time to do this. I want you guys, to add anything you'd like before we kind of wrap this up, and B, I want some solutions from you guys. That's what I look most forward to, because everybody, believe it or not, has something really unique to add. So anything you'd like to add before we get to your solutions?
I don't think I have anything more to add. David.
No, I don't think so either. And I think, you know, I'm ready
Do you
to talk.
believe that children are our future?
We let them lead the way.
And let them lead. Teach them well.
What do you show them?
All the beauty you possess inside.
Get it. Nice laugh there. But yeah, give me some solutions, guys.
So for me, the solutions. I love solutions. Personally, I think the solutions are you have to start somewhere. You have to start making a change today, and what that looks like, it could be educating yourself. I think that's the key right there, is educating yourself and stop taking yourself so serious and really kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes, specifically a black person. And furthermore, if you have a platform, use it for good. Okay, whether you're a radio host, a news anchor, a drag performer, a singer. Even if
Or
at the end of your show, just say Black Lives Matter, you know, because that will spark a conversation. It will
Or
get
if you
people-
just have a Facebook page.
a Facebook page, anything, use the Black Lives Matter.
We all have a platform now.
Use the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
You know, what do they call that? The screen or the filter for your profile picture.
Oh, yeah.
And not, but aside from that, and I've seen a lot of this, is that people will just say Black Lives Matter, but do they really understand the movement? You know, and it's, you know, take the time, go to the NAACP website and find out all the good that they do. Look at the Black Lives Matter.
Maybe make a donation.
Make a donation, but aside from that, it's really, you know, you can give money, but, you know, really changing your mindset and changing how you view the world and changing how, you know, you approach your day-to-day, you know, interactions is really going to be the difference. And if you see an injustice, you have to speak up, because silence is compliance.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
I think too that you know, I just started this book that Brian hooked me up with, actually, called White Fragility. And I didn't tell you this, Brian, but Fox News was bashing on it the other day. I was in the hospital recently, and I was switching to CNN, and right next to that on channel is Fox News, and I flipped through it, and they had a cover of the book up, and I just refused to watch that channel, so I flipped away from it. But I thought, oh, good, if they're bashing this, it must be good. But I just
Were they really?
Yes, Tucker Carlson was bashing on it. Of course he was.
Well, that's okay. Got it. That makes it a little more.
Yeah,
sense.
of course he was. But But dovetailing off of what Tim just said, educate yourself. And the way that I'm choosing to do that is that I feel like I need to explore my white privilege. I need to understand that more so that I understand how different I am than my black brothers and sisters. That's how I'm choosing to educate myself. And this book is so intense. I have the audiobook, and I was listening to it the other night, and I actually had to stop. I had to pause it, rewind it, and listen to it again, because the author, who is white and makes that claim right out of the gate, she's like, I'm white. So I can't claim to come from the black perspective, but she is calling out white people for their white privilege. And the fact, and in the first chapter, she lays out all the ways in which we are blind to it because of the way that we have institutionally been experienced. We've institutionally experienced our lives, and how blind to it we are. And it is so profound that I had to stop it. There's so much to unpack, and it comes at you so fast that I'm like, oh my God, she's so right. Like, all of the things that I just am blind to it because I'm white. And so for me, that's where it starts, is that it starts with me so that I can change my awareness and my situational awareness, and I can understand what black people don't have that I have, because I don't even realize that I have it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, I don't even realize that I have it, because that's how ingrained white privilege is to us, right? So I need to fully grasp and understand white privilege so I can understand what is being denied to people like you. So for me, that's the first step, is truly understanding it, and then I can start educating both myself and my friends about how to combat it. Because I just don't think until we face it, I just don't think the term racism or race in America or Black Lives Matter, to Tim's point, it's easy to say that, but what does it really mean? You know, like Tim said, you got to go educate yourself on what that movement really is. And so backing up from that point, that's where I'm starting, is I need to understand who I am as a white person and what that white privilege looks like, feels like, tastes like, all the experiences that I have had that are different than those of people of color.
What's the name of this book again?
White Fragility.
And you obviously recommend it.
Oh my God. And I'm just going to tell you, it's heavy duty, okay? But if you go into it with an open mind, you're just going to be blown away at all the things that you haven't seen, that you've just been blind to. And perception is reality. You can't see it if you can't see it. You don't know what you don't know. And I feel like for me, I need to understand what I don't know. And so this book has just, I listened to the first chapter and I literally stopped it, put the phone down, and I'm like, I just need to sit with this for a second. I can't even go on to chapter 2 yet, and I haven't. I can't.
This is just page 1.
I'm right. I was like, oh my God. But
Definitely got your money's worth.
Right.
But it is enormously profound when you hear it said back to you, and all the things that you
hold that mirror up,
that you just take for granted, that you just don't even see because they're so ingrained. It's just, and so if we could get just 10% of the population to examine 10% of that, we'd make a huge stride.
I love it.
You know? And so that's where I'm starting, and that's where I'm going to try to drag my friends along too. I already have a friend in my mind that I'm going to recommend this book to, because she is super progressive, is super enlightened, and is a white woman who wants to take action. And I'm like, I think this will empower her to take even more poignant action. I mean, if I could be 10% like Debbie is already, I'd be doing good. I mean, she puts her money where her mouth is, but I just feel like this book, I'm like, oh my God, Debbie has to read this. And, you know, I just feel like all my white friends need to read this and need to listen to this and need to understand what it is we're talking about when we say white privilege, because that's one of those terms that Tim says that people's hackles get up and the hair on the back of their neck stands up and, oh, you're taking something from me. No, we're just pointing out to you what you have that others don't. No one's taking anything away. I just need you to understand what you have.
And now you see why I asked you that question, right? You were like, I don't know. And boom, right? So this is what I gathered. We gathered. Tim basically said, educate yourself and start today. And David just gave you some material to educate yourself with. And that is White Fragility. Do you know the name of the author offhand?
No, but I'm going to look it up right now.
All right. Well, while he's looking it up right now, I'm going to do what I do. And I'm going to thank all of the listeners for continuing to listen in to do your part. As always, there's a solution at the end. And here we go. This is a way that you can do your part. The author's name is
Robin DiAngelo.
All right. We appreciate you, Robin DiAngelo. We appreciate you. I appreciate you two for being here so much. We love you guys, love each other, and that's a wrap for us. We will talk and see you soon. Cool.
Good. That was
Yay. Good. 209.
We did
That
it.
was good.
Yeah, that was good.
Do you
Wild
need to,
voices.
like, not record anymore?
Yeah, we can stop it.